All right, everybody. Thank you again for taking the time. We're excited to see everybody and we're excited to share. We basically, this is kind of the backdrop of some conversations that we've had with several investors of ours who, after seeing the results of this investment, wanted to know kind of a little bit more details on, kind of our process and how we go through things and how we do things and run things. So we thought that for just our contacts and other investors, we would be happy to share. So we have a couple slides, and it's mainly just discussions and casual of how we kind of came across the Toscana investment, which of course is just one of many of our investments, and just kind of speaks to what we try to do as an investment group. First, starting with the principles, what we've done over the years, and now serving our large database of investors and how we kind of run our whole investment process. And so that's what we'll be going through. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by some of our great team members here. We have David Molitor, Jon Wohlfert, and Joseph Albogan. I'm Daniel Farber, the CEO of HLC Equity. On a day-to-day basis, I do everything from oversee strategy and execution of our operations, our investment strategy, and everything having to do with expanding the company, and also continuing to maintain everything that we're currently managing. Without further ado, I'd like to ask the various other HLC team members to introduce themselves. Dave, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I'm Dave Molitor. With HLC, I am the head of operations. My responsibilities in my role include kind of oversight and management of the portfolio, property operations, and corporate operations. I'm also heavily involved with property acquisitions, the sourcing, analysis, and due diligence of the properties.
Great. I'm Jon Wohlfert. I'm the managing director of Layers. I have a long history of furnished rentals and extended stay hotel operations and marketing. And I lead the growth of the Layers brand. You'll hear some more about that today, but it's our version of a furnished rental program that appeals to the flexible renter that's starting to gain lots of traction in today's space.
I'm Joseph Albogan. A lot of you know me from working with you in investor relations. When we acquired this property, I was more on the acquisition side of things. And today, working with majority, or if not all of you. And if you haven't been in touch with me, be in touch with me, because we're trying to help grow our, try to make this a mutual relationship and take it forward. That's my main objective, is to grow our relationship together.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your for the introductions, and obviously you're going to hear more from everyone throughout, and kind of like how they have been involved and how they view the overall investment cycle. So just high level with the Toscana investment, and again, one of several investments over the last several years, but we're very grateful and thankful that this investment did very well for us and for our investors. So just high level, going into the deal, it was planned to be a 5-year hold. That is what we managed to execute on. Throughout the investment, we had 25% revenue growth, 25% rent growth, and 30% deal level IRR, with an equity multiple, a deal level equity multiple of 3.34 times the equity that was placed into the deal. So obviously, these are great metrics, and we're very happy and satisfied. And we're going to spend the rest of the time within the time frame that we have to discuss what it is that led us to be able to deliver these types of returns. So at this point, I want to ask Joseph if you can kind of at that point in time, again, this was many years ago, Joseph was overseeing the underwriting for the properties. along with other functions. And so I want Joseph to take us from the very beginning, and then in kind of the transition into underwriting, overseeing the underwriting process, then running into due diligence, and then ultimately performance, and then execution on the business plan. Please, Joseph.
Thanks, Daniel. So I hope everyone who's tuning in is doing well. As you saw on the previous slide, we have great returns for this property, and it performed very well. A net, I don't think it was on there, but net multiple of 2.8. So any investor who invested in this made almost 3 times what they invested. So first thing I want to say is Toscana is a great example of how our track record is to underpromise and overdeliver to our investors. When it comes to our acquisitions, I would say part of our strategy, I like to say that part of it is called finding the diamond in the rough. We try to look for a property that has something that the market may be missing, right? So that obviously adds to our competitive advantage. An example is Toscana. Toscana is a property that was marketed as a part of our portfolio. And towards the end of 2016, we noticed that Toscana was in a superior location. And being that it was 192 units, it could go unnoticed by other groups, especially if they're looking at the whole portfolio as a whole. And we've had success in the past with acquiring part of a portfolio. So that's something that we've had success, and we were very confident that this could work. So we underwrote all of the properties in the portfolio and noticed that not only was Toscana in a superior location, but it had higher occupancy and rents, and the vintage was built a few years after the other properties there. So all in all, it was a better asset in that portfolio. So we went after Toscana. We acquired it, purchase price $13,250,000, and we closed in 2017. And just now, as you saw with those numbers in the previous slide, we sold it for $24,450,000. That's what got us those returns. And this was at the end of July of this year. So the purchase price was significantly lower. Like, we sold basically almost double of what the purchase price was. And what's interesting to note is that investors, most of our investors were very into this deal at the time in 2017, but there were, as there always are, there were investors that passed on this deal because they thought the Dallas market was too hot. And that was back then, 2017, when the going in cap rate was at 6.3%. So it's just something that keep in mind. And on the other hand, we also had investors that really wanted to get in this deal, but we were oversubscribed. So we weren't able to accept them then, unfortunately, but they were able to get into the next deal. So on this slide, what I would like to do is focus more on the market itself. And I'm sure most of you know there's a strong Dallas market appeal. And now we'll give you an idea of what we look at, on a high level. Obviously, we're not going to go into too much detail here, but Toscana is centrally located, right? It's close to Carrolton. You can see it on the map here. But technically, it's within North Dallas. And at the same time, it's within the border of Denton County, which is kind of in the other direction. So it's a central location, really an exceptional location. We took a look at the demographics, crime rates in the area, education. For example, here, the property is in the school district of Carrolton Farmers Branch, which back then was ranked within the top 30% in the state. And a lot of that district falls in Dallas County, where it was ranked within the top 10. There's also ideal transportation, right? There's transportation access to just about anywhere here, because Toscana is on Kelly Boulevard, and you can kind of see the highway that's right there. That's President George Bush Turnpike. Right near on the east side of the property is Dallas North Tollway, going north and south there. And there are interstate highways. You see 35 East, that's towards the west of the property, and you have Route 75 going north and west on the east side of the property. So great access to all of these highways. It's a great location in that sense. And there is the Trinity Mills Dart Rail. That station is right a little bit east of the west of the property, sorry. And it includes the Dart Rail Green Line that gets to uptown and downtown. And there's also the 8 train that gets to Louisville and then continues on to Denton, a little bit northwest. So you have access to those areas as well. Texas is a very business-friendly state, right? I'm sure a lot of you know that, not just for the tax, the tax benefits, but also there are incentives given to corporations. And even back then, Dallas was the second fastest growing metro in the nation, with well over 100,000 people added in a year. In 2016, the employment growth was almost 4%. So, plenty of jobs all around. And just to name a few of the employment hubs, you have Platinum Corridor, which is 50 million square feet. And that's, pretty close to the property. It's about 2 miles east, exactly where we were looking at the Dallas North Tollway. And 5 miles away, you have Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital and Baylor Scott and White Medical Center in Plano. Of course, you have Legacy Business Park. That's 2,665 acres. So not a small business center by any means. Toscana is located within the vicinity of major retail hubs, right? You have several malls not far from the property. Also, you have shopping centers that are pretty close by. You have Marketplace at Frankfurt. There's Mills Point. There's several Walmarts in the area. But if you go about 4 miles away, you have Shops at Willow Bend. And about 7 miles away, you have the Galleria Mall. Both of those malls are just under 2 million square feet. And then you have Grandscape. Grandscape is about 7 miles away from the property. And when it's completed and with its final phase, it's going to be 3.9 million square feet. So you have a lot going on in the area. Now we can go to the next slide. I just want to go into the property itself.
Wait, Joseph, I just wanted to mention that something that you really is important that you didn't mention is that one of my driving indicators for this is the individual who I stay with every time that I'm in Dallas, who also happens to be an investor of ours. This was the closest property that we were going to own that was in close vicinity to his house. So for me, that was a big driver. So just what that sometimes there's the market fundamentals, and sometimes there's just the practical that you gotta look at the whole picture.
Definitely.
There you go.
No doubt about that. Good point. So, and here we're going to focus a little bit more on the property level. Obviously, we're not going, this is just high level, macro level, whatever you want to call it. We're not going to go into real detail, and we're not going to cover everything. We're just going to cover some of the items we have on here.
Joseph, did we lose you?
Tax assessments. We're looking at overall expenses. We're looking at, basically we build an extensive model that includes all of this. And we're looking also at CapEx and renovation budgets and all of that. So in short, we look at everything, but we'll just go through some of these items. So Toscana is comprised of studios and 1 bedrooms. It's mainly 1 bedrooms, right? And we shop the comps, and that solidified the opportunity for us in terms of the value add. We noticed that already at that time, renovated comps within I think it was 2 miles, within 2 mile radius, were generated 15 to 20% more rent. And we also compared amenities, and Toscana had an upgraded fitness center. It had private patios, balconies for the units, a pool, hot tub, valet trash. So it had all of that going for it. And we analyzed the financials, such as the rent roll and the T12 very thoroughly. The year over year net operating income increased by 14.3%. And the net profit margin before CapEx was over 50%. So Toscana had all these things going for it. And we also obviously looked into a lot of other factors. Here, I'll hand it off to Dave, who will go through the due diligence reports, since he was very heavily involved in that. And take it away, Dave.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Joseph. So, yeah, Joseph kind of set the stage for all the reasons that we were so attracted to the property. And, after we kind of did the analysis, fell in love with the location. Actually, even, while this is all going on, we go down for our initial site visit, and As I think Joseph mentioned, we're looking for the diamond in the rough. So whenever we do these site visits, this is just one of many properties we're looking at typically, especially at that time. We're looking at a lot of deals. And this one really jumped out to us because of the location and all the numbers and everything behind it. It just seemed like a great fit. And so, after we go through the LOI process and the bidding process, and then the contract negotiation process, and finally get under contract, we begin the due diligence is kind of happening simultaneously, but we begin in earnest once the contract is signed. And our due diligence process is pretty extensive. We even before we get to the site and we do on-site due diligence, we're reviewing a lot of things. We have the standard stuff, the third-party reports, the property condition report, the phase 1 report, all the appraisal, all the stuff that you'd normally see. But we're also looking at additional items. We're reviewing 12 months of work orders. We're reviewing the general ledger reports for the last 12 months, looking at every expense, making sure everything makes sense and matches with the T12s that have been provided. We're doing an extensive utility bill analysis, making sure that, hey, the usage there is consistent with the bills that we're seeing, the numbers we're seeing, and nothing has changed, because utilities often, make increases and do different things in the middle of the year that you might not have captured in the T12 numbers. And we're reviewing all the contracts, everything from marketing to, in this case, the boiler being serviced, and just making sure everything's in place and it makes sense with our numbers. And then, we get into kind of our due diligence at the site level, where we're completing a lease audit, reviewing every lease, making sure that it matches the rent rolls that have been provided. We're shopping the competition again, making sure, all of our assumptions were correct in our market analysis. And whenever we see the properties in person, which we also did during the initial site visit, but we need to do a more extensive one during our due diligence, making sure that, we have identified the competitive market, and that our rents do make sense compared to what we thought initially. And then we're walking while we're on the site, we're walking all the units, making sure that, hey, they said that in this case, 80 some or so units were fully upgraded. Is that the case? Yeah, we're going to check all that. We're going to check the general conditions of the apartments. And then, we're also simultaneously walking the common areas. We did a fairly extensive common area upgrade here, which we're going to get into. We're just kind of making notes and building our budget around that as well. We bring in contractors to help us make sure that what we're seeing is correct, and we're not missing anything. So people that we work with in the area, vendors and contractors, we're using too. So our due diligence is a big part of what we do, and it's kind of I'd say it's risk mitigation, because we're trying to catch anything, and not at this property, at other properties we have caught things during the due diligence, and we are definitely trying to confirm all of our underwriting assumptions. Now, during the due diligence, and a little bit even before we kind of suspect this may be the case, we noticed that the vintage of the property and the upgrades that were made did not include necessarily upgrades to the plumbing fixtures. So the toilets in the units and but particularly the sink faucets in the units were all kind of that original vintage. They hadn't been updated, or whenever they were updated, it was before kind of low flow devices occurred. So on the slide, we talked about the opportunity being green financing. Well, at that time, the Fannie Mae offered a financing program that had incentives to kind of reduce energy consumption and water consumption. And whenever we kind of going through our due diligence, confirmed that, hey, there is an opportunity here, we were able to take advantage of that program a little bit more. And so we were able to kind of increase our proceeds and kind of get a little bit better of an interest rate on our loan in exchange for replacing and installing kind of low flow devices, shower heads and aerators throughout the property. It was a very, very cost effective and compelling program for us to take advantage of. In the end, we actually, during our due diligence, we thought we were going to have to do more than we did. I think we spent something like $20,000 to $30,000 total to kind of do everything at the property level. And in exchange for that, we were able to push our leverage up nearly another 10% and get a little bit of a discount on the interest rate. So all really positive things, and it was all part of our due diligence and went into making this opportunity and this investment a success. So, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to the opportunity there. Those are kind of my comments.
Yeah, no, you covered it all and then some. I don't know. That's good.
So
by all
okay,
means, please. So Dave, yeah, you really really oversaw the value add program, operational items that went into making sure that this property was a success. Even throughout the time that we were working on our business plan, we got many inquiries from people wondering, why is the occupancy this way? Something may, what's going on here? What's going on there? And really throughout the whole time, I remember Dave just patiently saying, people need to understand this is like, this is a process, and in order to add value and do the value add programs that we do, not everything goes exactly as planned, and the real question is, what is the end result? And so I think that this will help speak to some of that and kind of what was going on throughout that whole period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Daniel said, as you start out, we kind of build a plan in our due diligence and in our underwriting. Then, once we take over the property, which is a process in itself, and we begin to execute our business plan, and things change, and we have to prioritize and do things along the way. So, while we were, this is kind of this slide indicates, we had basically budgeted about $640,000 capital improvement plan, and we had different ideas on how we might spend that within the units, but we ultimately kind of decided to focus on the existing classic units that existed that hadn't been touched by the previous ownerships. Our inspiration and our model that we implemented here was based on our previous experience, both in the market and another property in Denver, where we had done kind of similar value add programs. The one property I'm referring to in the DFW area is called Windscape. It's in Grand Prairie. We did a light value add program there, and then a property we had at Sagebrook, which was also a huge success for us. It's in Denver, and we did a very similar renovation that we implemented at Toscana. So our renovation at Toscana, after kind of going through it all and again focusing on the classic units, we did a value add that included flooring, new carpet throughout. We did paint. We added stainless appliances. We did new cabinet fronts. We actually used the same vendor we were using in Denver, and they actually were shipping it to us at a discount to what we could get in Texas. We added a storage facility so that we could save everything. We just did a bulk order, and then we installed them as we went. We were doing 2-inch blinds. We resurfaced all the countertops, and we did new plumbing and lighting fixtures throughout the upgraded units. So it was a pretty extensive renovation. It cost about $67.50, as noted on the slide, per unit. That kind of varied, but it was that's kind of approximately what the cost was, and we were able to receive a nice premium. It was about $100 a month of premium for that. Now, kind of what we do is in-house, we kind of manage these renovations, and there's a lot of benefits to doing so. We're able to kind of control the whole process, and we're able to kind of keep the costs down on the overall, because we're not paying a GC to oversee it. We do it in-house. We use a lot of our in-house team to do parts of it, and then we outsource what we can't do to third parties. So our in-house guys were installing the cabinet fronts, and they were doing the demo, and they were kind of doing the fixtures too, things that they could do. And then third parties were doing the paint and the floor and everything along those lines to kind of make it all work for us at a cost effective price point. So that was kind of the renovation, the unit renovation, and kind of how we implement it. Now, over time, as Daniel said, the speed and the rate varies whenever, especially when you're managing it in-house. So, sometimes we were able to do a lot and sometimes we weren't. And we kind of, in the middle of it, we got hit by the pandemic, and that kind of slowed things down for a period of time. So, the pace of the renovation, while we only were doing 50, kind of varied. But in the end, we were able to get to the 50, and we received the nice premiums on the renovation. So that was one aspect of our value add program. Another, which I kind of touched on before, was the green financing. So I kind of noted that we did the value add the cost savings reductions of low flow shower heads, low flow aerators that we actually had. We didn't realize at the time, but during the business plan, but we were on a tight time frame once we took over the property to get it done, because there was to comply, we had to get it done. So that we've actually prioritized that ahead of everything else to get that part of the project done. And it did end up resulting in 20% annual reductions of water consumption at the property, along with all the benefits that we received, through the kind of the increased proceeds and the discounted rate. And finally, we did some other kind of more common area and technology upgrades. We focused on a couple of areas. So the pool had not been resurfaced in a while, so we resurfaced the pool. We installed new package lockers. So this is a pretty tight fitting community, and there's all kinds of packages that are coming in every day, and that's a huge burden on our staff. So we put package lockers in. It's a benefit to both the residents and to our team, because our team no longer has to manage them, and our residents can access their packages kind of any day, and any time of day. It's a benefit to everybody. We did a lot of concrete repairs and improvements throughout the parking lot where there were, some issues, and we improved security by installing cameras throughout the property, and also lighting helped with security, but also in general, we installed a brand new, lighting package, really all exterior lights, including the ones kind of in front of the doors of the units, were all kind of upgraded to LED, brought down our electricity costs, and it was also better for the overall appearance of the property and security there. So we had an extensive kind of common area value add program that we implemented along with the kind of the green financing, renovations. And finally, we did a little bit of technology upgrades. Certainly we had a resident app that we put out that was a huge improvement over the previous managements, where our residents can communicate with each other, and they can pay rent and put work orders in online, but also communicate not only with each other, but with our property teams, and take full advantage of that. We also added a mobile app so they could open up the gates instead of having to either punch in a code or use a clicker. So we try to take advantage of technologies that really enhance the residents' experience, as well as part of our overall value add program. So I don't know, I'll pause there and see if there's any comments, Daniel or Joseph, I want to add there.
No, I think that was a great summary of kind of like the overall value add program. And we have another slide here that kind of talks to a lot of what you already discussed. But I think that you touched on a really important factor, which I think would be great for you to kind of concentrate as we go through these items, which is, you mentioned, especially when you're running this stuff in-house. And I think that a question we receive all the time, and I have some colleagues of mine who think that we're actually just absolutely nuts because we actually own and operate our buildings, as opposed to delegating everything out to third party. And so I think that it would be helpful to go through kind of a little bit more details on the actual renovation program. And then also, what that entails, the fact that we, as an investment owner, we also operate our properties, we also property manage, as opposed to giving it to a third party manager, in areas that we're able to sail a tighter ship, so to speak, and run things more efficiently, and cost control and so forth. The advantage is why we choose to do this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as Daniel kind of said, I summarized a little bit of this before. This is a good breakdown on the slide of what we did within the units, the flooring. And unfortunately, there's not really a before or after or before photo here, but we took what was essentially a 1980s finish. A lot of them hadn't been touched. They had the original sheet vinyl, almond colored appliances, paint that's needed updated, etc. Very old, everything. And we turned it into what those images suggest, which is a nice plank, luxury vinyl plank floor, stainless appliances, kind of a gray tone paint. We took kind of your standard mini blinds, and we added the 2-inch blinds, and the countertops, which were kind of just like an old laminate. We were able to put a more granite looking resurface job on it. It was still laminate, but it was we were able to resurface it, and then we updated the lighting and the plumbing fixtures. And the benefits, as Daniel's going to get into, us executing that in-house through our own management, there's a lot of them. The cost savings I kind of touched on. We manage it, so we eliminate the GC. Now, if we were using a third-party management company, you'd have the GC costs. You also often, it depends on your contract, but you also often have costs related to project oversight for that third-party manager. Those are absorbed by us by kind of doing it in-house, and we reduce that. Certainly the GC costs are basically eliminated altogether, and we're able to control all the other kind of management related costs as well, by managing ourselves. A lot of times if we're outsourcing, then the items that we're able to push to our team, we know our team's schedule, being so intimately involved in it. We know whenever, hey, at various months, we're going to have a lot of turnover. We're not going to have a lot of turnover. This is the time to do units. This is not the time to do units. And we're able to kind of, I don't want to say micromanage it, but yes, certainly get very down to the property level and pay close attention to it. If you're outsourcing that to a third party, let's say there's great third party management companies, and they can do, they do this stuff all the time, but it's different whenever you're looking at it from an owner and an operator perspective, and how we can maximize both the cash flow, how we can make sure that our teams aren't overwhelmed, and we can but also execute our business plan. So all of that is a benefit of kind of doing this in-house. And the costs, we were able to get what is a very extensive renovation done for about $6,700 a unit. I think that compares well, and it's at least, a comparative upgrade if using a third-party management company and a GC would have been at least $2,000 more. I think that's a fair statement to make. There's a little bit of give and take there, but at least $2,000 more per unit there, and we were able to kind of bring that in-house. Part of the reason we're able to do it, though, is we focus on building out a really good vendor network in the Dallas area. So yeah, we're managing it, and our team's doing a lot of it, but we also have contractors that we work with. So we're managing that process, and that we schedule them, we order all the supplies. In this case, we kind of created a program so that our on-site team could just push like one button essentially and order the supplies they need from one reputable supplier, and they would all show up, and the guys could install it and do everything they need. But we're managing when the painters show up, when the cleaners show up, when the resurfacing team shows up, the flooring, and that takes a lot of execution. But we have kind of built the way the spreadsheets and the tools in the background so that we can do that in-house and not have to rely on a GC to do that and collect a premium for doing it. So those are all kind of benefits to us doing it in-house. Now, one of the other items I would say is that our managing these things in-house also helps us to inform our acquisitions decisions. So whenever we took over Toscana or any other of the properties we've taken over, we have such detailed knowledge of what's going on the ground, how these programs work, how fast, and what we can do and when we can do it. And that informs our investment decision and allows us to make better investments. And that's a huge benefit. Whenever you're relying on a third-party manager to do that for you, which you can do, and and again, lots of groups do. You're often relying on their expertise and their experience. Whenever we're doing it in house, we've built that own experience and that expertise ourselves. So.
Yeah. Dave, it's funny as you're speaking. I mean, because we decide to touch every stage of the chain, basically. So I'm just, throughout the life cycle of this specific investment, there were certain times where Dave, on one moment, he may have been dealing with a one person on the property who was accusing another person of calling them a derogatory term or a potential altercation, and also lots of other good stuff. But I'm just saying, like, hard situations to deal with. And then literally maybe 20, 30 minutes later on an investor call talking about capital markets. So I do think that those being on the ground helps to inform those, call it higher level discussions as well. So I think that kind of speaks to what you were speaking about. So thanks a lot. Do any of you guys, John, Joseph, you have anything else to add before we move on to the next one? Great. Okay, thanks. That was a really good recap of everything that took a lot of effort and a lot of time, but it was great recap. So several people have probably heard about the Layers brand and what we've done and what we're currently doing with Layers. And since then, we've expanded in a major way. But this was actually the first time that we really implemented any form of Layers on one of our properties. And it's actually, we use this property also to analyze, would it make sense for us as an investment? Does it make sense for us to implement this? And so, going back several years now, we kind of started out there's with the overall vision that the multifamily industry needs to innovate, and there needs to be more of a service-oriented feature within multifamily and in what can we offer our customers, our residents, and is there a better business model that also makes sense from a user standpoint, from our customer standpoint, and also is a good economic investment to make, and will it help improve our properties? After a lot of working back and forth, we were able to integrate now what we call the service apartment component. So Layers as a total brand is a community focused brand that helps us to bring in overall operations and to make everything more community focused and also innovative. So we have everything from the app, which Dave referenced, and we can talk about how we leverage that and at our properties, and other kind of like innovative performance features that we do within our properties. And then a major part of it is also offering service apartments, which are basically furnished apartments and also some services around it. Now, for those serviced apartments, we get premiums, but everybody benefits from the overall program. Everybody benefits, all of the residents at the properties benefit. And from an investment level, everybody benefits because we're getting premiums on the rent. And there's a large market with serious demand. When we were initially analyzing, should we run a service apartment program once we built it, should we run it at Toscana? I remember talking to Nina, who's now our hospitality director, and she gave us quotes high level, and Joseph was on the phone with her, and she said, this is what you could get for these units. And just using rough numbers, if it was, $800 regular rent, she gave us something like $2,000 or something like that. And I was like, get out of here. There's no way, right? And she was like, let me try. And we let her try, and she went out and she got the first one moving. I mean, it took a lot of work and a lot of investment, but she got the first one moving. And from there, we just grew it. And we saw every step of the way that it made sense, that it added, dollars to the bottom line at the property. So we continued to run it. And so this was really where we were able to set the stage for the platform, which is then expanded. I'm going to let John take the rest of this slide and the next one in order to discuss, more details about Layers. John is really the managing director of Layers. And John, I think that it would be helpful if you can just give 2 or 3 bullet points of your background, and then going into where Layers how it's evolved and where we are now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Daniel. Great to be with you, and I'm excited to be here, and certainly excited to be with HLC. I think they're a pioneer in this multifamily serviced apartment world, trying to do it under one roof. And as Daniel said, my background is extensively in furnished slash serviced apartments or extended stay hotels. I was with Residence Inn before it was Marriott, and stayed with that group for many iterations: Summerfield Suites, Candlewood Suites, Woodspring Suites, and at the same time, every so often I jump over with a corporate housing company, and I worked with Bridge Street and Reside, and even Synergy Synergy Global Housing. So it's been a deep experience, and I think this slide really speaks to that marketplace. And we're seeing kind of a migration from this, it only works for corporations, right, to now there's becoming a huge demand for individuals that are looking for this space. Thanks to the pandemic and others, we now have workers that don't need to be in an office, or a lot more contract workers, because the job market is so tight that companies are willing to hire temporary workers, particularly in the medical area, or in temporary projects, just to bring in the expertise that they need into that marketplace. So it's really a market that's growing. You can see at the bottom of this slide, and this is just in the last 30 days or so, there's been 3 articles about this flexible living and flexible rentals. And we see it really getting traction. And Daniel and team were on it in an early stage, and really created a really unique model that helps drive incremental NOI to a property. So when you heard Joseph and Dave talk about, we try to find things where we have an advantage, Layers is definitely where we have an advantage, right? We in our underwriting, we try to understand that market and what's around it. Are there hospitals? Are there company offices? Are there projects going on in that area, that whether it's work on the airport, or building out a big office project? We look to those kind of areas and really try to quantify that demand. And the operating model is pretty straightforward. We take an apartment, we put furniture and services in it, and mark it up and distribute it to the world, if you will. We have a great network and a good distribution channel to be able to do that. And so when you combine this Layers and our Layers track record with this multifamily pedigree that we have at HLC, it's kind of a unique offering. And jump to the right side here, and I've kind of touched on the key segments of this marketplace. The digital nomads, right? We all have heard about those. Whether a relocation, if your job is taking you from one place to another, or if you're an individual and you're doing some work on your house, or you have a flood, or you have an issues like we've seen across the country, whether it's mold remediation or other things, there's quite a bit of demand for this particular type of accommodation. And the other thing to point out too is it's not just putting furniture and services into a multifamily asset, it's also providing flexibility on the term. And we typically look for 90-day stays to start with, and those 90-day stays turn into 5, 6, 7 month stays. So it's really a space that we're very keen on, and we think offers a lot of value and growth down the road. This segment is only going to continue to grow. So maybe jump to the next slide, Daniel. So this is kind of our approach. Once we've identified a property and determined that Layers is going to be a good fit there, we drill deeper into the market and try to understand the competitive set in that market and the pricing. And then that helps inform us on the amount of revenue we can capture on a transaction basis. So once we've vetted that, we then have a number of different approaches to set up the apartments. We work with designers and furniture vendors if we're going to purchase the furniture. And then we also work with rental companies that will rent us the furniture. So we have a couple options that we can put in the model and see which one produces the best results for us, whether it's a market we're going to lease in or whether it's a market we're going to own in. And then from there, we do all the marketing things, right? We take great pictures. We have a copywriter that helps write the descriptions and explains the property really well. And then we have our own channel distribution platform that allows us to distribute that inventory to all the appropriate places. And those places, some of them you're familiar with, right? Like an Airbnb, and others you probably aren't familiar with, like Furnish Finders or the corporate housing companies, Nomad and Reside. We distribute that inventory to them as they many times need locations that we have at the price point that we have. And then from there, we work and educate the property teams so that they understand where their role starts and what their responsibilities are, and where our corporate roles start and end. But it's a really nice marriage and a complement to show that, you know, teams can work together to do this. So jump to the right and you can see the Toscana stats here. We had almost 5-month average length of stay. Those apartments ran really high occupancies, 91%. And that's what you'll see in this longer term stay, right? It's really a hybrid between a hotel and an apartment, right? And think about that. If you needed something for, you know, several months that might be furnished, there's not a lot of options, right? You can go to an extended stay hotel that has a kitchen, but that's probably going to be a little tight for you if you have more than a couple people in your family. Or you can go all the way to getting an unfurnished apartment and renting furniture yourself and assembling those things. But then you're going to pay a premium anyhow to shorten that lease. You're not going to be able to you're probably not comfortable taking a 12-month lease when you think your project might only last 3 months. So you really have to decide. So this is a nice fit between those two, where you get the stability still of kind of a multifamily lease, because these people are actually signing agreements to stay for a specific period of time and pay a particular rent. So you get that stability from that and a commitment from it. And as we know, life changes and many things get extended. So we really just keep the flexibility into that model and allow people to extend as often as they like. Daniel mentioned the average rent. This is a 2 times unfurnished rent premium that we gained in Toscana, and that's kind of our target. And when you add all those things up, it's a 20 to 30% lift on the unfurnished rent when you take out the expenses, furniture rental, utilities, and the others that we provide. It gives somewhere a 20 to 30% lift. Now, Toscana is a fairly low rent market, right? So think about this: when we go into markets where rents are higher, the furniture costs are roughly the same. The utilities are probably roughly the same. So we can really grow that 20 to 30% net margin to, 40, 50, 60% net margin in markets that have higher base rent. So we feel like Layers is a great model for our future and great fit to where we're starting to underwrite and look for new deals. So, the goal is to drive incremental NOI. The property owners and property investors are always looking for how to drive that incremental profitability into that deal to get better returns for investors. So that's what we're doing with Layers.
Thanks a lot, John. And I just real quick, 2 notes on so one thing that you mentioned with extended stay hotels, and one way that I like to describe it is this portion of serviced apartments that we implement in the multifamily properties, it competes with extended stay hotels, but we're able to offer a better price and a better experience because they're living in residential properties and they have a whole community, and we have the community focus around Layers. So that's number one. And then the other thing is that, so while we go out and we actively do these programs on our own properties that we invest in. We also offer it to other owners, and we also have some JV scenarios that we can create in order to to drive some partnerships that we can do in order to drive higher returns for potential real estate partners that we can work with as well. So I think it's just important to note those things. Thanks a lot. Cool. Dave or Joseph, I want to be mindful of everyone's time, but do you have anything real quick you wanted to add?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is, Daniel noted that whenever he first learned about the premiums well, I shouldn't say whenever that we first got confirmation from, Nina, who works with us on this, that we could, achieve rents that were 2 times the base rent, the conventional apartment rent. I was also supremely skeptical, and we walked through the whole value add program, everything we did, but this is truly a value add. And whenever we implemented it took time, and we ramped it up but we got it on to 10 units at this property. I mean, it truly added a lot of value, and it was a great experience, and something we learned a lot along the way, doing.
Right. And for those who aren't aware, we've since purchased with this brand other properties, and we have been able to achieve the same results, if not better, and also to achieve a terrific occupancy, which is, I think, the even more impressive is the amount of that we're able to keep these units filled is really speaks to the demand. So because I'm losing my voice and because people are busy, I just will wrap up here with kind of some overarching themes that we're going to look for going forward. Again, this is just one of many deals that we've done as a group, but we'll continue to find deals where HLC has an edge. We really felt like we had an edge here between a bunch of different things that have been mentioned, between the underwriting, between it being in a portfolio and being overlooked, so on and so forth. And then obviously going into the operations and the edge that we can bring there. So we're going to continue to find areas where HLC has an edge, focused on core market fundamentals, and also just on where deals where the numbers make sense. And then continue implementing best-in-class operations, and of course implementing the Layers program where there's market demand and where we see fit for the Layers program. So I want to thank everybody for joining. Thank you very much. This video, this webinar will go out, and you will be able to view it again if you want, or if you have any, you want to review anything, or if you want to send it to somebody. And I encourage everybody, we have a case study that we put together on this specific deal to go over high level some of what we discussed here. You can download that. The link is right here on this page. It's hlcequity.com/Toscana case study. I recommend everybody go onto the website. You can download the case study. We'll also have some summarizing emails coming out, any questions or comments or any inquiries, please feel free to direct to our investor relations, ir@hlcequity.com. We look forward to future deals and to doing business with everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We appreciate your time. And until next time, thanks a lot.